Totally.
So Rich Redmond, how are you, sir?
How are you, man? Good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
thank you. So worldwide pandemic, almost a full year to the day since everything started closing down, especially this side of the world. How have you been and what have you been doing?
Well, man, it's great to be here. There's definitely, yeah, it depends on how you frame things. Like for me, I knew I didn't want to really be the same person a year later. And so, I mean, things are different. Yeah, I got a deeper tan, my hair's longer. I went out and I got the Nike, if there's any runners out there or folks that just want to like track their calories and miles traveled, I got this Nike running app and it's really cool. And it's just like a running app for dummies. You just press start. And since 1 year ago, I've ran 850 miles. So if I didn't run those 850 miles the way my girlfriend cooks 3 meals a day, I'd look like I'd be huge, right? So the idea of taking that time for yourself, lots of water, I drink coffee and tea, lots of good vitamins, for the first time in my life, I've had a full refrigerator and 3 meals a day. And you know what that's like, because you travel full time for a living. We have this thing called catering. And so you get up in the morning and you have access to 3 or 4 meals a day. And so when I come home to Nashville, maybe I'm only in Nashville 48 to 72 hours. And so for a long time being a single guy, it's like, well, I'll just, you order in, or you have your nice spots, you can get something healthy, pick it up, or I'll just load up the refrigerator with a bunch of green juices. But this has been a real treat. I spent the year taking acting classes online and auditioning for a million like indie films and commercials and keeping the podcast going. I'm up to 108 episodes of my podcast. I wrote a TEDx talk. I took a couple of professional development classes, got the sticks in my hands. I fly to Nashville all the time to do recording sessions. So, just keeping that ball rolling so you're creatively engaged. And when the call comes and it's like, hey, Redmond, Aldean, we got the call from Live Nation, I'm ready. It's like I got the stamina to play the 90-minute show. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm in a good headspace to do that. So I know there's a lot of people suffering out there mentally, financially. This is just one of those things that you can't control. And the way to handle it is just, with positivity and gratitude and humility, and just try to do what you can, control the things that you can control, because we can't control this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, firstly, congrats on like everything.
Oh, thank you so much.
I first heard your name from Mike Sleeth, who's with Shawn Mendes, plays drums for Shawn Mendes.
Wow.
Yeah, so great. I did a podcast with him a few years ago, and he was like, I was like, are there drummers out there that you'd love to meet? And, are there drummers you aspire to and stuff like that? And he was like, Rich Redmond. And I was like, oh, great. And I was like, I didn't know much about you at the time, but he was like, this guy does like everything. So
that's sweet.
To hear
I'd love to connect with him. That's great.
Yeah. I'm sure he would. I'm sure he'd love that, and he'd probably maybe come on your podcast.
I would love that. You can connect us. That'd be awesome. You're the connector.
I would love to do that. Yeah. And so congrats on that. Congrats on the podcast. You're like the definition of a portfolio career, which I love. Oh. And so one of the things I love to know and love to ask the people that I have on this conversation series, you're accomplished in so many areas, like speaker, podcaster, author, drummer. And something I like to do is get people to kind of give me like a blueprint from where they started to where they got now. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Steve Jobs Stanford address, where he says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking forwards. So what do your dots look like?
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to revisit that. It's, you're talking to a guy that's 50 years old. So like when I started playing drums in 1977, it was a different world. And by the time I got good at my craft and started, studying more and playing in bands. And when I probably went professional in 1988. I was like, it's usually when people go pro around 18 years old, you start getting paid to play bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and community centers and nightclubs and, raves, you get out there and you start making some money to do your thing. And that was a different world. And then the 90s hit with all the Doc Martens and the grunge. And I survived all of those things somehow. I had a vision for myself where it was almost like I kind of used like a drummer like Greg Bissonette as a model, because Greg could like read a movie score date. He could play on the soundtrack to Friends, and he can go out and rock with David Lee Roth, play Brazilian music with Tanya Maria, big band jazz with Maynard Ferguson. I said, that guy will always be gainfully employed his entire life. And he'll even get around the ageism of our industry, which is, you know, the music business is a very youth-oriented business. But if you have the right skill sets and you can speak that language and you've got a great reputation and you can work with people with a smile on your face, tech direction, you'll always work in this. So I wanted to have those skill sets. So that was very important to me. And for me, it was just drums and drums and drums and drums forever. And then when I realized, wow, I have a teacher's heart, I started teaching, and then teaching became writing for magazines and then doing the motivational speaking. And then I was like, you know what? I have this like thing that just keeps nagging at me. The universe just keeps saying, Rich, you're a salesman. You could be in a toothpaste commercial, or you can MC or host a live event. And then you just start doing these things, and then your bag of tricks just keeps growing. It doesn't mean I don't love playing the drums. I'm just trying to be smart about this. The music business is changing so much, and the way people value creativity and the arts, people will pay $4.99 for a fart app on their phone, but they won't pay 99 cents for a piece of music that somebody slaves over for 10 years of their lives. So the arts have been devalued. So just trying to be smart and saying, I want to keep a roof over my head. How many other cool things can I do that are in the world of education and entertainment, and how those things can kind of converge? But I still feel like you got to get good at something first. Like getting good at the drums and being able to turn heads and be able to be consistently hired is a great way to break the ice to people, to say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, this, and this. And then people will take you seriously doing those things because they've seen that you have the gumption and the fire and the desire and the persistence to get good at something, you know? So I don't know what the model would be for today's kids. I feel bad for kids that are 19 years old that are going to college and studying the drums, and they're doing it online and they can't get together with other people, because music, as you know, being a cruise drummer, it's so social. Yeah. The guys and gals in your band, I mean, you're just with each other, 16, 17 hours a day, doing shows,
Yeah. And so it was drums first, and then everything kind of followed on from that.
Yeah, just keep adding bricks to the pyramid there, Yeah.
And so how did the Jason Aldean gig come about?
Okay, so that's all relationships. I speak a lot about this with this CRASH philosophy that stands for commitment, relationships, attitude, skill, and hunger. So attitude is so important there, but really relationships and all these things, all these commitment, they all kind of influence each other and cross-pollinate. But I think the creative arts are all about people. And so I met our guitar player, Kurt Allison, in 1997. We were playing together. He introduced me to a young man named Tully Kennedy, who's our bass player, in 1999. We started working with this young recording artist named Jason Aldean, who at the time really wasn't even really a recording artist. He had a publishing deal, and he was interested in getting a record deal. And we just rehearsed with him so much and played on his demo sessions and did showcases and jumped in vans to go take the music to the people. And then when he got a record deal in 2004, he was like, that's my band. I got my band. I don't need to do auditions. I already like these guys musically. I already like them. He liked us personally and professionally. So it was like a no-brainer. And we've been playing music together for 21 years now. So was there an audition? Not in the sense that like, hey, be at SIR at 12:10 p.m. with your sticks, like a cattle call audition that they would have in the 90s. It was more just like, I had a skill set. I brought the heat. Those guys recognized it. We liked each other, and we just stayed together. Which is hard to do.
And
it's
many
very hard
years
to do.
And many accolades later, here you are.
Yeah, man. I had black hair like you when I started. So,
I'm going gray, mind.
But you know what? I got a little cue from the universe the other day. I went and got a bunch of new headshots with me with this salt and pepper hair, and I said, great. Now I can show people that I can easily get to the salt and pepper. But now I think I don't want to go quietly into the night. I think I'm going to break out the box color, man.
I think you rock it, man. I think it looks great. If that's what I look like, if that's what I look like in the future, then I'll be happy with that.
Oh man, I appreciate it.
And so skill set, like you talked about, skill set is a big one. So what sort of skills do you think earned you Modern Drummer's Country Drummer of the Year for 3 years?
Oh man. Well, those are great things and they look great on a, one sheet or a bio, but music is really, I don't consider it a competition thing like sports. It's a thing. It's just like you want to do your job, and if your peers in the industry recognize you for your hard work, it's always a great thing. But there's so many great drummers in Nashville. I mean, I could list them off. There's 30 or 40 top name guys that some guys have been working the road for 20, 30 years. Other guys have been playing on records for 20 years. Some guys are like myself. We kind of swim in both waters, which is kind of fun. But there's just so many amazing qualified drummers in Nashville, but I'm just out there, man. And I think I'm visible. People are like, wow, I see that guy in the award shows and I hear him on the radio. And that was always a goal of mine, is I wanted to hear myself on the radio and travel the world on someone else's dime. And, and it was kind of like a mission statement, kind of like, show me the money. It was like, Jerry Maguire is like kind of like a mantra, and it kind of can help you guide and shape your course. But the things I like to talk about with drummers being prepared for things is, you know your rudiments, you can read, you have good technique so you can express yourself, you have a good touch so you can create a good tone on your instrument, then the coordination to be able to do 4 things at the same time, then be able to play a myriad of styles, so your rock, your jazz, your funk as the big 3, but then in there you've got like Latin, world, reggae tone, you got all the little subgenres, and then being able to play with a click or without a click and make it sound good, be able to program loops, be able to handle some percussion, overdub some percussion, and then just know some of the ins and outs of the music industry so you can survive this thing, because the music industry is really the Wild West. So if you can do all those things, I think you're giving yourself a better chance of success. I do a lot of teaching, and sometimes I'll hear guys and I'll say, like, send me a video of you playing with this track or whatever. And they got good posture and they got a good sound. They can lock with the track, but they don't know how to read music. And so a lot of times I'll teach guys and I'll be like, look, we'll do online lessons and I'll hold your hand and I'll make sure that you can get all the way through the Ted Reed Syncopation for the Modern Drummer book. And by the time you get to the end of that book, you're going to have this skill set that's going to help you so much. So if you do go to the cruise ship and you've got to read Village People's YMCA and it's all written out, you're golden. Or if you go to a recording session and somebody says, we're going to cut this song and there's no chart and you have to scribble out your own chart and there's a bunch of figures, da 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 ba da ba da, you could write it out. This is a massive skill set. I can't encourage reading enough. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching reading levels 3 and 4 at Musicians Institute in Hollywood, and I get all these great kids that they have great feel. They're playing like with System of a Down tracks. And I'm like, great. Can you read it if you had to? And they're like, and that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially in my job, that's pretty much the gig. It's like
clicks.
No way you're going to remember 250 different tracks
clicks, tracks, and charts.
Yeah. And like you said,
styles.
Sometimes there'll be a track that people will want to do that we won't have a chart for. So you chart it yourself, so it's like super important. I think in my mind, I think, this is nothing bad to say on people who learn and they don't read, right. But yeah. I think it's the equivalent of learning how to like speak and articulate from TV and film rather than the written word. I kind of find similarities in them both. Like when you learn to like read music, you learn how it's constructed so that you can construct. Whereas if you just hear it as a phrase or on a TV show or a film, you don't learn how they constructed it. You just know what they've said so that you can repeat what they've said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just filling in the gaps so that once again, you don't have an Achilles heel. I mean, it's like you're wanting to fix as many chinks in your armor as possible. So as you're marketing. So like, where did you get your training? Did you study like with a
I
teacher?
Did. I started playing drums when I was about 11. I'm 27 now. And I started playing when I was about 11 to get out of maths class. I hated maths. And a kid came in one day and he missed most of the maths class. I was like, where have you been? And he was like, oh, I've just had a drum lesson. I was like, no way is that even a thing. This was back when like music was really encouraged in schools. And so I was like, I'm going to do that now then. That's how I started. And then I obviously loved it, fell in love with it. But I've always had teachers throughout my life. So, you know, I had a teacher that, you know, was my first teacher, and then I went up and up and up. And then I went to Newcastle in England to study my undergraduate. And then I went to London to study my master's in music.
Nice.
And then I had a year where I was just auditioning, and then I ended up on cruise ships. But yeah, so it's always been that thing of like, you know, drum education is like as like, you know, learning drums through that medium, you know, and outside of that, just like this obsession with like wanting to be as the best that I can possibly be through like technique.
Yeah, man, well, you're doing good and you're gainfully employed, man. It's like, I always thought about doing cruise ships. It was really, really funny. We have a funny story with me in the Jason Aldean rhythm section. We used to call each other the Three Kings. And, you know, it's like one night we had too many Irish coffees, and I said, why don't we call ourselves, because I'm kind of like the marketing guy. So I was like, let's call each other the kind of like the Three Kings. And we all, before we met each other, got hired to be in the lead, like the main showroom on the brand new Disney cruise line. And our bass player took the job, and me and Kurt didn't take the job. But if we had all taken the job, we would have met each other 2 years earlier in a cruise ship show band.
That's the universe.
But the universe is like, no, let the bass player go do that. He made a bunch of money, then he got married, then he lost all his money, then he met us, and then we started, you know, working with him.
Yeah, but it's like a great way to live. I'm so grateful for Carnival. Like, you know, like you said, the universe has a funny way of kind of like directing you. And so all the major things that have happened in my life, the universe has like guided me for it. So, you know, like a bunch of failed auditions like that I was auditioning for, I had to like fail those in order to get to Carnival. If I'd got those, I never would be with Carnival now. And, you know, I'm like so grateful for them. And, you know, I'm hoping that it will happen in the future where it'll guide me like that as well. Sometimes in your biggest setbacks at the time, it sucks and you don't know what to do. But then something comes along, you're like, oh, this is exactly why the setback happened, you know?
Yeah, and probably with you, you know, being your age and being single and having that accent, you're probably having a great time.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty good, yeah. And so you have your musical accolades are like just astounding. Like, you know, most people, including myself, aspire to the things you have done, and I've been very lucky to have people on the podcast that have done some really great things. You've done some of the biggest TV shows, well, the biggest TV shows on the planet, stadiums, award shows, everything like that. Did you put that out there to the universe that this is what you wanted?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I had a mission statement along with that. Was like, I wanted to hear myself on the radio, see myself on television, and travel the world on someone else's dime. So it was like a statement.
Right.
And then I had another statement that said, I will be a top call touring and recording drummer based in Nashville. And so these are really like important things to write down, and they're really important. It's very important that you write them down, and then you can look at these things, and it's like, it's something that kind of like propels your life forward. But I always knew I was going to do these things. It was just a matter of when, because I tell people, you know, Jason Aldean is my Bono, he's my Sting, he's my Mellencamp, he's my Billy Joel, he's my Elton John. These are all these drummers that played in those with those artists. They had such an interesting, close relationship with their frontman. And as a drummer, we're only as good as our frontman and the people that we surround ourselves with. So I personally wasn't going to stop until I found that individual. So thank God I found him, and also because he changed my life. And also it was good that I didn't quit the music business because I didn't meet him till I was 29 years old. You know, sometimes, you know, there's these seasons of your life and things are supposed to happen when they're supposed to happen. But a lot of people give up on the dream way too early. And if you give up, then you take yourself out of the running and you're at the back of the line. So just realize that if you're listening to the podcast and you're a creative, that this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And you just have to celebrate all these little victories. Like even in the world of me, just like in the last 6 years, you know, tackling Hollywood, just getting to the point where I can do 2 auditions a day is like a major step in the right direction. Just getting connected enough to get the auditions through my reputation, through my representation's reputation, to get in the rooms and get those opportunities. Next step is booking a lot of these things. So it's the same thing. Like there's so many parallels between Hollywood and the music business and other areas of the creative arts. And it all comes down to people and opportunities and being patient and being prepared for those opportunities when they come, you know?
Yeah. This is the first time I've spoken to a like motivational personal development speaker. So this is like hugely exciting. Like I absolutely love that world. Like some of my favorite speakers are like Les Brown and Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins. Beautiful. Like I love listening to those guys. So this is hugely.
I like Les because he's like a preacher, man. You know, I mean, he's got that preacher background.
Yeah, and it's just like
you hang on every word.
Yeah, and he had like what I loved about him. Like I'm sure you've been there in your life where, you know, you get the job and that's what you put out there. You put into the universe what you want, the universe gives it to you. And then a part of you is like, feels that like imposter syndrome start to creep in. It's, you know, it's the human nature of it. And what I loved about Les Brown and what I love and what I will always love is that he had no formal qualifications at all to do what he does, you know, which is what they thought people needed back then to do that job. He just had a passion and a voice and he is Les Brown, you know, and that dedication and determination to do it, which I think is just such a lovely message to people that like, you don't always have to feel that qualified for the job in order to do the job, you know?
Yeah. Fake it till you make it. I mean, there's something to that. I mean, if it's an oversimplification, but I just let people know that what you want is on the other side of your fear, and fear could be jumping into a pool of sharks and the blood is in the water and you go head first with a smile on your face. You're like, look, I'm going to swim with the sharks, you know, like taking drum lessons with the guy that teaches at the community college or at the corner music store is a great way to get started. But eventually you're going to want to study with Dom Famularo or Kenny Aronoff or Sean Pelton or Freddie Gruber. You're going to want to study with these guys, just like me taking an acting class at the corner acting studio in, you know, backwards somewhere in the middle of America is not going to be like taking an acting class in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right. Where every waiter is trying to get something done and they're so ambitious and they're trying to achieve something. And so by being around them, you rise to the occasion and it makes you better and everybody can lift each other up. It's like my band, we're totally accountable to each other. We'll come off stage and it'll be like, what happened on the second verse of the 6th song? And did we want to do a trash can ending on that song? I thought we were going to do a nice tight, and we talk about it. And then the next night we can fix those things or address those things or make things better.
Yeah.
You know,
and what I love about what you've just said is about like the life timeline, you know, of like, if you're going to be in this industry, right, you know, you're going to have to meet, you know, when you first come out, you should be professional within 3 years, then this, then this, then this. And what I love is that life is never, ever like that. You know, like you met Jason Aldean when you were 29. Like I didn't even turn pro until I was 26 or 25, I think, which in my mind, when I first started, I would see, you know, when One Direction were as big as they were, because I want to be a pop musician. When I saw their drummer, Josh Devine, playing the biggest stadium tours, I think he was in his very, very early 20s. And so I think I naively was like, oh, well, that must be the standard for, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then as I started, you know, as I'm older and I got more educated, I was like, it'll happen when it happens. I've got life goals like Glastonbury Pyramid stage. And, you know, before I was in a bit of a mindset of like, well, I need to do that before I'm 30. But it's like, why? There's no need, you know, like you said, so it's a complete marathon. So I thought I would just touch on that. I really like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to also keep your, you know, there is a thing called lifestyle and in these kind of like lifestyle, life design, really, where it's like, you want to keep yourself open to every opportunity that comes your way. And sometimes that involves making decisions like staying single, not having children in your 20s, and like giving yourself more time for these things, because once that happens, the focus has to, and rightly so, be on the family and the health of the child. You can't be like, no, I'm going to go out with this, you know, band that's got tons of potential in a van because it's like baby needs shoes, right? So sometimes that's something to consider as well. And it could be a little painful because, some of my friends who put their career first are now like 55 years old and they never had any kids. So it's really hard to have everything in life. You have to kind of prioritize kind of things and just kind of go after it, man, and be patient.
Yeah. And I think the universe will always do what's best, I think.
Yeah.
I like to think anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
Another one, social media and the modern world at the moment, for all its, for all the amazing things that it can do, like connect, like right now, like connect me and you, we would never have had this opportunity without social media or ways to do it. But it also, I think, kind of slightly encourages this like filtered lifestyle of, so for me, for example, it would be easy for me to go on the ship, do my contract, post pictures of me at the beach in, the best shape of my life. And then I could come home and be like, oh yeah, it was the best. And it is the best thing that's ever happened to me. But obviously it doesn't encourage people posting the parts of the job that aren't that great. So I was just wondering for you, what parts of the job are things that people don't generally talk about that much?
Interesting. Yeah. Well, my thing is I try to put a positive spin on like everything I'm doing. And the whole idea with social media is trying to find that tribe of people, those true believers that are going to be with you no matter what. And, you find a common interest with. So social media could be something as simple as me posting pictures of my love of avocados, or it could be me posting my crazy love affair with palm trees. Like I could tell you all different types of palm trees and like their history, what countries they came from, what's like how long their lifespans. I am obsessed with palm trees. I love sitcom comedies. Like I'm not going to stop until somehow I could be one of the douchey friends or the douchey husband on a sitcom. It's like a fantasy of mine, even if I just do it for one day. And then I had another friend tell me, they're like, yeah, you never post like the behind the scenes, like ridiculously hard grinding work you do to say, prepare for a gig. You'll just show the picture of the venue and the beautiful drums waiting for the crowd to come in. But you didn't show you learning this, charting the 60 songs at midnight the night before. Right. So she said, post a picture of that. And so I'm like this, and I'm like, but I mean, we're drummers. We're in the music business. We love our lives, man. So it's like a cool thing to share. And I think that if you worked really hard and suffered on a paleo diet on a cruise ship for 6 months, you should show yourself. Yeah, man. Be proud of it, man. That's what I say, is just kind of like own these things and put it out there. And I think people obviously respond more to positivity than negativity. It takes twice as much energy to cultivate and maintain negative thought. So that's why I say, why do we even do that? Yeah. But we have to fight it as human beings because we're wired for negativity. Because back in the day, we barely lived to 30 years old. We didn't have modern medicine. We're trying to keep the fire lit. We were running from saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths. And like I said, we were dead at 30. So we didn't trust anyone or anything. And we're looking over our shoulders so we could survive. Yeah. And that's like in our DNA. So we really have to fight our negative thoughts to try to stay on track with the positivity.
Yeah. That's a great answer.
I don't even know if I answered the question.
No, it's a great answer. I think sometimes the sacrifice of the job is a big thing for people. So, people see us do these incredible jobs without realizing. We have guests come on the ship, and it's so funny. One of the most common questions we get is like, where do you guys live on the ship? And it's like, yeah, of course we live on the ship. Like we don't get a lifeboat to a hotel
we live way down in the bowels of the ship where we put the musicians.
We live below the waterline, yeah. And so, it's interesting, people's perspective. They see us on stage, but then they don't necessarily associate that with being there, for the full duration, for the 6 months. And I'm sure it's the same on tour,
Yeah. Do you get cabin fever or no, because you're always like getting dropped off at these sandy spots?
I think like it's like you said, we get to play drums for a living. This has been my dream my whole life. And so I try and never take that for granted. Especially it's more reinforced now since we've been off the ship. Because you get into your routines and it becomes normal life, And so I think sometimes you will, because if you're not on a very big ship, it's like there's only so far you can go. But like you said, most days you're in a different country every day, you know? So it's like, you know, you'll be in the Bahamas, and then you'll be in Jamaica, and then you'll be in Mexico, like all within 1 week.
Nice.
And that's just the same repeating thing. So I think one of the hardest parts about the job is, you know, when you're kind of, because the contracts are 7 months. So I think when you're maybe like 5.5 months in on a Tuesday, you know, then it's kind of like, right, you know, we have to find other ways now to really get geared up for, you know, this. But what the nice thing about the ships is that we have new guests every week. So they bring a new energy every week as well. You know, it's like having a new show every week. You get different guests every week.
That's nice. So who are your guests? Like Suzanne Summers comes on with the Thigh Master and does her
No, I mean
the
actual guests, as in like the people who come to cruise. So we play in a rock band.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the guest artists that come.
Yeah.
So what's like a working day for you? What's your schedule on the ship?
So before we go, we're put up in the studios and we learn the songs, and that's a 9 to 5 every day for a month, and then they send you to the ship. So then when you get to the ship, the first couple of weeks is kind of like what I would imagine tour prep is like, where you're kind of first few dates on tour, you're just kind of sounding things out and things like that. And then the average day, I would say, you get up, if you're in port, maybe have like breakfast, and then you get off wherever you're ported. So one of my favorite places was Cuba. We got to go to Cuba on one of the contracts, and then so. Nice. Me and a bunch of my friends would go and tour Cuba together for the day. We'd get back to the ship before, like for our on-call time, which is like an hour before all the guests. And then I would go to the gym. I'd have a workout. Then I would eat. Then I would like shower and change. And then I would go and warm up every day for at least an hour before every night. Yeah, get my wrists and stuff warmed up. And then we play maybe like 8 till 12. So we'd have 4 45-minute sets. And then you'd have like 15 minutes in between each one. And then probably the crew bar in the evening. Like after.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
That's where all the real action is.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of that. Yeah, that's kind of what you do then, like, you know, every day for it's like 6 months.
You have to try not to spend your profits on all the drinks.
I mean, luckily for us, the drinks come at cost price.
Okay, so it's way low.
Yeah, so it's like what they pay for it, we pay for it, you know, rather than like the added stuff. Yeah. What about you guys? So on a Jason Aldean tour, what is an average day for you guys?
So the tour bus comes screaming into town anywhere between like 6 and 9 in the morning, and a lot of times I'll be like shaving on a moving tour bus, and then a host will pick me up from like a high school, a college, a guitar center, a music store. I'll do some sort of a midday event, and then I'll come back, have some lunch, do sound check with my band. Then there's a workout in there, you know, doing admin on all my businesses, trying to keep the lights on. And then we'll all go to catering together. Then we'll do some sort of like unplugged show for all these VIP folks, where I'll play like a cajon or a djembe or a cajon with a pedal. And that's fun. And then we have 90 minutes to hang out, and so the band's kind of like vibing, listening to music. They might be having some cocktails. I got the practice pad out, stretching. We clear the dressing room out 30 minutes before the show, and that's when the band really gets to vibe together. And then I have to do a kind of like a quasi motivational type cheers thing that's got to be different every day. And then we go to the stage. It's like Follow the Flashlight Kid, and we go on 9:25 to 11 p.m. 11:01, I'm wiping the sweat off my head. And then we hang out with each other. We're on such a high, you know, no one's going to bed before 1 in the morning, usually 1:32. And it just depends on what I have the next morning. You know, I get sleep when I can. COVID has been great for sleep. I've been getting 8 hours every night. And that is for the first time in my life, or at least in a very long time.
Yeah.
You know?
And does it ever become like it did for me on the ship? You know, before I got to the ships, I was like, you know, oh my God, you know, I'm going to live it every day. And I do, but it does become normal because it has to. Otherwise you'll just be like living in this frenzied state. But, you know, for like that tour, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, does that ever become, you walk on stage, you know, and you don't think this is like madness?
No, I'm like, look at, I mean, so we'll come out like 10 minutes before, kind of like side stage, and, you know, the DJ Silver's doing his thing, and the folks are in a frenzy, and they're getting all ready to do whatever they're going to do, because it's about to pop off. And then the lights go down, and it's like, follow the flashlight, and I go up to the drummers, I high five my drum tech, you cut the ears in, you're just double checking everything, swig some Gatorade, a couple of spins, and then it's like, it was like, what? This is incredible. You know, it's amazing. It's everything that you did all your paradiddles for, you know, as a young man, you know. So hopefully that never goes away. I'm going to, you know, be relevant for the next 20 years and keep doing something special like that, because, you know, I like playing, you know, events and jazz bars and recording sessions, but there's nothing like that thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think even from the short time that I've been speaking to you, I think you'll be relevant until you're like 80s, 90s.
Thanks.
Like, just from what the vibe, the energy that I get, you know? And so,
I'll be like, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That's the only way to go out, though, I think.
I think so.
And so you mentioned earlier on as well, it's really interesting actually, because I think when I was a bit younger, I thought that just like one drummer did everything. So they do touring and they do the studio work, but quite often that isn't the case. You know, like I was speaking to a few other drumming friends, and they were saying, you know, I play on the live tour, and I was like, oh, so you just play what you played in the studio on the live show then? And they were like, no, I didn't play on the album. So there's clearly like a distinction in some of those things, but you do them both.
Yeah, well, it's especially in pop music, because so much of pop music, like, you know, my good pal Mark Schulman, he's very capable of playing on any Pink song he needs to play on, but there, you know, Pink might have 10 different producers on a particular record, and most of them like working with programmers, and they're in their, you know, Pro Tools. And so, and it's like, it's just been such a different thing. Now, at least in Nashville, classic rock music moved to Nashville. So we ran with that ball where it's like live players on the studio floor. And then starting in the 80s and 90s in Nashville, there was the guys that kind of went out and worked the road. And there was this small collective of guys, kind of like the A-Team, that kind of like the wrecking crew that played on everything. And then as Nashville started to change and open up, with me starting in 2003, I was in a band called Rushlow, and we played on our own record. And then that led to me doing the Aldean thing. And of course, we played on every track for Aldean, every award show, every music video. It's been so great to be involved in something like that. And there's so many guys that are qualified to do the studio and the road, but sometimes it just comes down to the artist's camp, to their philosophy, to what the label wants, what their producer is comfortable working in. And my advice would be just to try to do as many sessions as you can with as many people as possible, and do as many live gigs with people as you possibly can. And that word will get around, and you'll cultivate a reputation. And then before you know it, that reputation will precede you. And then it's on you to exceed the expectations of your reputation. And it's just this kind of ongoing thing. But am I grateful that I get to go in the studio with my best friends, make something that's going to exist for all time? Yeah. And then get to go out with my best friends and go out and take that music and bring it to life and have that visceral interaction, that high form of communication with the audience, and share that moment together and impact those people and change those. It's awesome. It satisfies two different sides of my creative personality, you know?
Yeah. And so do you approach every like studio session as a blank canvas, or do you have certain like things that you will run through?
Yeah, definitely the blank canvas. Like, so, you know, first of it's like having the tools. So if you get called to say like work on, say like a Nashville demo session where it's you're booked from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And in that amount of time, you'll probably record anywhere between 3 and 5 songs. So the pace is very, very quick. So you want to have a nice overall good sounding drum set. So for you, is that a 20 or 22 or 24? So most likely you would pick a 22. And then for the style that you're doing in Nashville, you're going to have either a 12 and a 16 or a 13 and a 16. You're going to have some good all around cymbals that'll work for a lot of different styles. Pop, country, you could play them a little bit softer for the traditional thing. Then you might want to have a collection of snare drums where it's like, this is my Spin Doctor snare drum, this is my Bonham snare drum, this is my Gadd workhorse drum, this is my Mick Fleetwood Rumors baseball bat and the birthday cake. So somehow you can get those 5 different sounds and get them very quickly. And then you have the tea towels, and you have brushes, and you have rods, and you have a chain that you can hang on the cymbal for rivets. And then you have a little system where you can program loops. And then you have some quick basic overdub things like shake your tambourine, maraca, congas, bongos. And you could get to this stuff, and you're super organized. You're like a Boy Scout. You can cover a lot of things. So those things are always ready to go. Then I'm sussing out the situation. I'm looking at the artist and their posse, and the songwriters. Are the suits from the label there? Who's the engineer? What sounds is this room known for? Who are the other musicians on the studio? I'm like a psychiatrist and a conductor all at the same time, right? You got to learn how to read the room. But now for a Jason Aldean session, it's the same cast of characters, same studio, same catering, same players, same engineer. We know each other inside and out. It's like, hey, Rich, how you doing? This guy, Pete Coleman, that did all the Blondie records and the Pat Benatar records, and he did My Sharona for the Knack. And so he's coming from that, like working in LA, in England and LA. He brought that skill set to Nashville, and he goes, hello, love, good to see you. Let's get the sounds. And he's all, so he does his thing, and I go in there. He's like, Rich, just give me the boom, boom. Now, just the snare, love. God. Okay, kick, snare, hat. So just the toms, just cymbals and kick. Give me the whole thing, love. And he goes, great. It's great as usual. I'm going out for a smoke. Boom. And then I meet him outside, and he's smoking. We have our coffee, and then the musicians come in, the charts get passed out. We're making history. We've got this down to a finely tuned mechanism. It's amazing. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of like home base. And then any other recording session I do is kind of like we cheat on each other. But when we cheat on each other, we get that new experience. And as a result of that new experience, we could bring that experience back to home base.
Yeah.
And then Los Angeles, the sessions that I've done are more painstakingly slow because traffic is so bad, and people are just like, let's hole up for the whole day. Drum sounds at 10 a.m. means not drum sounds at 10 a.m. It means you arrive at 10 a.m. and then you mill about and you have some coffee and you start getting some sounds, and at least in my experience. But I'm sure if Bernie Dressel or Vinny or Alex Acuna or one of these guys that are doing all these Marvel soundtracks, that's like big business. You're at Capitol Records, there's a 100-piece orchestra with the SMPTE time code on the back. I'm sure that's more, that type of thing, which is what I would love to get into, because that doesn't exist in Nashville. So I'm kind of looking at my next 20 years. So what I've been doing is I've been looking on the IMDb. So I look on imdb.com and I look up movie composers, and I've been just cold emailing movie composers and be like, hey, you don't know me from Adam, but I played on a couple of #1 songs, and I can read and I can play styles. Love to meet you sometime. Can you keep me on your list? And sometimes it's like crickets, and other times it's like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, when this opens up, let's go get some coffee, or I'll save your number. Just kind of putting yourself out there is something that people should be open to.
That is amazing. That's probably one of the nicest stories I've heard, especially coming from someone you've achieved so much. It'd be so very easy for you to sit back on your laurels and think, I've done it. I don't need to be approaching these people like, they will come to me, blah, 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 but
they don't.
And you're absolutely not. And so it's so nice. And, it's like difficult to put, like you said, it's difficult to put yourself out there and to just like email someone. I have to do it with this series, no one knows who I am. And so when you reach out and you're like, I'm so-and-so, it's always a no if you don't ask, right? So it's so nice that you still do that now.
Yeah, because, Steve Gadd is, 20 something years older than me. And he came up in the time in the music business, which was all velvet ropes and budgets and cocaine and Studio 54 and like all. And so, it's nowadays the music business just isn't as healthy. And sometimes, people might know me in Nashville. They're like, yeah, that you can hire that guy to do the country rock boom bap thing. Like he's going to do the job for you, you know,
Yeah.
and people come to me in that city. That's easy. Now in Los Angeles, you know, they don't know me in TV and film. And so like, what am I going to do? I'm going to either just sit around wishing for those people to call me, or if I can just kind of nudge them a little, just poke them a little, be like, hi, I'm here. I exist. I want to work with you. I want to play on your next horror film.
Yeah.
Can I make some creepy sounds on your next horror film? Can I act in your next horror film?
Yeah.
Can I do the voiceover for your next horror film? Like, what can we do here? How can we work together? You know?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And it's inspiring because sometimes at this level, you know, there'll come a day where I leave Carnival and then I will be also then sending out emails and things like that to people. And
oh, but the best time to do it is right now. So Dan, like you're on the ship, be kind of like, because the best time to get another job is when you have a job.
Right.
So be pinging people and be like, hey, you know, you're at Abbey Road next month. Can I pop by? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so it's nice because sometimes people feel like awkward or that they can't, you know, like message people. Like sometimes the questions I get, even with the people that I've had a conversation with, they're like, how do you do it? And it's like, well, most people have a contact page on their websites, you know?
Right. Well, who are the big session drummers in London right now? Is there a guy that still, is his name Jeff Dugmore or Jeff, but it's spelled Jeff, Jeoff?
I'm not sure.
Is he one of the big, okay. See, things change so quickly.
Yeah.
I was wondering who the big session drummers are.
There's a big fixer. I think he plays for Dua Lipa. He played drums for Dua Lipa, and now he manages a bunch of other very, very up and coming music artists in the UK. So I think it's about like hopefully establishing contact with people like that, you know, and just offering your services and things like that. But yeah, there are a few I'd imagine. And this is such a lovely way. The podcast is such a lovely way of like getting that introduction. And, you know, like I've met two guys that I've done them with. I don't know if you know Jake Summers. He plays for Luke Combs.
Very well. Yeah, we did a whole year, or if not 2 years, with him opening for us. It was incredible.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So I did one with Jake, and I managed to meet Jake in London when he was with Luke. And then I met Mike Sleeth. It was so weird. Shawn Mendes played a gig in Swansea, where I live in Wales. And it was like a BBC Radio 1 big weekend. So then I messaged him just to say, I know you're in Swansea, like if you're free after the show, whatever. So we then, it was so surreal. We were watching 30 Seconds to Mars, like standing next to each other. It was the weirdest thing, you know?
Awesome.
So it's always nice to like get to meet people in person. And there's a guy off Broadway as well. But
that's great.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just like you said, it's about putting yourself out there. Like it's never gonna happen if you don't ask for it.
No, you got to get out and shake trees, and also another thing that I've noticed is, you know, we all are such a text society because it's so efficient, but there is something so cool about picking up the phone and calling an old friend or calling somebody that you maybe met at an event a couple of months ago, but you're taking the time and the energy and the action to kind of move that relationship in a forward direction. And not everybody is doing that. And so I think that's a really cool thing to kind of try to keep alive.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, like, I'm sure with you as well, like I put no pressure on the podcast. So like the podcast episodes happen as they happen, you know, like my drum life is my main thing that I focus on, you know? And so it's nice that there's no time pressures. Like no one's saying like, you know, you have to have an episode every week, you know, because like
if you wanted to build it, it's good to do consistently one every week. So my advice that you didn't ask for is it's like what I do is I pre-film them. So like this month I'm filming like 12 episodes, and then you put them in a queue, and hopefully you're not talking about things that are like super current events, and you just can kind of like drip them out. Right. So you're way ahead of the curve, and that way you can always put out at least one episode a month, because when I was I had a podcast called Pick Rich's Brain, and people loved it, but sometimes I'd only do like one a month, and people were like, I love the episode, but your schedule sucks. Like I want one every week, Redmond. And then, so I got hip to that, and it really does make a big difference.
Okay. So if you've got any friends that you would be up for it, then let me know.
Yeah, man. Well, Instagram is so great because you could just send a message to any drummer in the world and be like, "Hey, Simon Phillips," and most likely the guy's going to hit you back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's kind of how I do it. Sometimes what I do is I scroll through, like you do with IMDb, I go through Wikipedia and I'll just think of an artist. So I'll think like Lady Gaga, and then I'll go onto a Wikipedia page, and you know, under the section of like touring, it'll usually have the band
Musicians.
and so I just select, because you know, it's not exclusive to drummers. I just find I gravitate towards drummers because obviously I am one myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, a great way to meet other musicians, and let's face it, most gigs, like I love the community spirit that drummers have and this fraternity and brotherhood that we have, and we do recommend each other things, but most likely you're going to get a job from a music director, a band leader, a bass player, a guitar player, a keyboard player, the chick dancer, the background singer. It's going to come from one of those folks.
Yeah. So it's about being in those circles as well as just the drumming circle, right? And so you said about Mick Fleetwood, and you're out in LA with, I believe, Dave Weckl and Vinnie Colaiuta, and you know, some of like the giants of this industry. Have you met these guys?
Let's see. I don't know if I've ever officially like met Weckl or Vinny, like, cause sometimes they're at events and they're thronged by guys. And a lot of times I'll go to the Hollywood Pro Drum Shop has a Christmas party every year. And it's so great. It's like the who's who, you know, your Kirky B's are there, and your, you know, my buddy Jason Sutter and my friend Stu that runs the Musicians Institute. And we're all just kind of like hanging and mingling, and it's like unbelievable. And it's the same thing in Nashville. It's like, it's that drummer thing, or just thick as thieves. But I have yet to meet Vinny or Weckl. But I know, a lot of the guys, you know, the Bazios, and they're here, man. They're just cool. Ed Thomas Langs of the world. And the thing that I try to remember about people is, if I'm ever slightly starstruck, I just say, look, at these people pay taxes and they poop and they put on their pants one leg at a time. So go over there and talk to that guy, you know? And if I can tell that they're the type of personality where they wouldn't introduce themselves, I'll make the effort. I'll go, and then you just go over and you're like, hi. I mean, and it's like, if you got a smile on your face and you're enthusiastic, man, that stuff will transcend language barriers, cultural barriers. When you're coming towards somebody with a firm handshake and a smile on your face, you're halfway there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so do you have any drummers that you would love to meet?
Who have I not met? Oh, everyone's like, you really need to get Stuart Copeland on your podcast because he was like one of your first influences, and you really need to get Alex Van Halen on your. I'm like, look, I've got a list a mile long of all the drummers that I want to get on, but obviously Stuart's a little bit of a recluse. Yeah, I think he lives in Beverly Hills. And Thomas Lang is good friends with him, so I could probably shake some trees there and maybe get to Stuart Copeland. And Alex Van Halen, I could probably get his drum tech on, but he's a very reclusive individual. And plus, recently with the passing of his brother, he's probably not in the mindset right now to go out and do any kind of interview. So some people you just are like, you know, I'll probably never get that guy because he just doesn't do interviews.
Yeah. I love how you have those contacts.
Well, it's so funny. It's like, you remember it used to be 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Now it's like 1 degree of anyone. It's like somebody that you meet in real life or via social media is somehow connected very closely to somebody that you want to meet. It's like I want to have John Stamos on the podcast. I made a list of all the drummers that are actors and actors that are drummers. So your Michael Chiklises and your Dana Carveys and your John Stamoses. And so it's like, I know a dude that teaches John Stamos drum lessons. So it's like, I could shake the tree, and most likely John Stamos and I are going to be having a conversation. You know?
I absolutely love that. I would love to meet Mick Fleetwood. He's a huge one of mine. I would love to meet him.
Yes.
Steve Jordan.
Dude, we did. Oh yeah, we did. I hate to cut you off. It's that Zoom lag, but we did an iHeart thing 2 years ago, and it was our band, Panic at the Disco, and then Fleetwood Mac. And I watched side stage Fleetwood Mac, and so Mick Fleetwood comes off stage. I don't know if this was so strange, but it's so spectacular, and it reminded me of James Brown. But whoever his handler or his tech or whoever it was, after he came off stage, they gave him a towel, right? And he gave him a cape. Some sort of a cape. and he put on this cape, and I can't wait to ask him what the hell that's all about. But it was just like, I mean, we're talking extreme rock starism. So like the limo was ready to go, and all these guys with flashlights and towels and cold water and capes. It was awesome.
I think when you have a cape guy, you know you've made it in this industry, right? But he is that's a huge one of mine. I love Mick Fleetwood. Steve Jordan is another one of mine.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Benny Greb from Germany, like people like that. Jojo Mayer. I've met Jojo Mayer at a clinic. He was a big one of mine because I'm obsessed with his hand technique.
He's a mad scientist.
Yeah, yeah. But I've been so lucky on this podcast alone to meet some incredible people, and so I'm sure you have had some incredible.
Well,
people.
See, people are you say, hey, do you want to come do a show? And just people are always just like, yeah, man, because we're on Zoom, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just it's very flattering. And so most people say yes, man. You just got to have the gumption to ask them,
Yeah. And I usually find that I send maybe like for every 30 emails I send, maybe 10 will get back and maybe 3 will do it. So then if you figure out your ratios, then you just need to send like 300, and then you'll...
Okay. So who said no?
I don't think it's that they said no. I don't think it's that they said no. I think it's just that they just didn't respond or didn't. When you're messaging people, when you're messaging like some people are like incredibly kind. Like I'll never forget. Gavin Harrison replied, and he was like, "It's not really my thing, but I wish you all the best with it. I hope it goes really well and stuff." So
interesting.
Yeah. So I remember. Like those people more than the people, I think I send so many emails or messages that sometimes someone will come back and I'll be like, I forgot I even reached out,
Yeah.
But
some people are just not timely with their emails response time. It's like, if there's any advice I can give you there, it's just like, just go ahead and respond right away, because then people are getting so many emails and so much spam nowadays that it's easy for that thing, even if you don't mean it to, it just gets lost in the shuffle. Yeah. So really there's no, you've got this device in your hand. So even if you're like on the John in the crapper, you can there's no excuse, so. And
so what would your advice be for me personally? This is something I never really ask. I never ask a personal advice. This is a big deal.
You should do that.
For the podcast itself, when like, usually I find the most responses I get are through a contact page. That's mostly what I've got replies from. And then we set up the podcast through there. How would you, if they don't have a contact page through their site and they've only got, you can message them on Twitter or how do you do it so that they'll see it or they'll respond to it?
Yeah. I think that sometimes you might have more success not even doing the contact page. I mean, go ahead and do that, but it's like, there's something very powerful about Twitter. Has the personality of like a water cooler talk, so you're in the office, there's a water cooler, and it's kind of like that conversation, micro blogging. So say some celebrity drummer you enjoy you follow their page, and then you just reach out, you're like, hey, Jojo Mayer, I just got up the nerve to ask you to be on my pod, you know what I mean? And then see if he responds. And then that was such a dad joke. And then there's also the direct, DMs on Instagram are just, I don't know, I've had the best response there, even with like, actors and comedians that are like, yeah, I usually go through my management, but you sound like a great guy. I'll do it. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, it's great, so.
Yeah, cool. Because obviously, like, I think the more I do, the more people will want to do it. It's that like snowball effect, I think, because obviously I've got 6 out. I think you'll be the 7th. So it's about trying to build that from there.
Yeah, then you drop Jake's name, you drop my name, and if anybody cares, that they're more likely to open the door up to you, and then you just keep building on it and building on it and building on it. The main thing is to not stop, because in the podcasting world, most people get to episode 20 and they realize that there's no money in it and it's a time suck, and they quit. And that's really, try to get to 100 episodes. And then I found that once I got to episode 100, there was like a massive shift where people are like, hey, this dude is not stopping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it just builds on it.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to do him with Seth Rausch as well.
Oh yeah, Seth is great. Seth is kind of like, he's this massive family man. He's got these model looks, and he's
Yeah.
he's a family man, and he just doesn't get out, and I never see the guy, but occasionally I'll see him on tour, and I've kind of watched his rise through the ranks with Gary Allen and all these up and coming acts, and he just did it right. He sounds great. But he's like an international man of mystery. Like when I'm out and about, I never see him because I think he's got 6 kids. I'm like, yeah, I would be home
Yeah.
too, trying to keep that all together.
Yeah, I remember he said, and I was shocked. Like, what a nice guy. And like you said, like model looks, like he's got it. You know,
he's a human coat hanger. You know, it's like I'm so jealous because he's like a foot taller than me, and he's just like razor thin. You know,
how tall are you?
I am 5'7", but I tell everybody I'm 5'8".
Nice. And so how tall is he?
Oh, Seth has got it. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. What is he? 5'10", 6 feet? I don't know. Everybody's taller than me. So it's, you know,
Yeah.
when I meet,
Yeah, go on.
when I meet somebody that's shorter than me, I really like kick sand in their face. It's great.
Yeah. And so you have just kept this career alive. I can probably already answer this through just your charisma and everything else, but how do you keep a career alive like you have?
Well, there's a lot of factors. You got to have your skill set always be growing, but have whatever it is that you do, have that always be fine-tuned and spit polished up, and you know, realize that there's all sorts of factors in the music business. Like I said, it's like you know, clothes don't make the man, but there's like fashion changes and stuff like that. So it's good to keep up with that stuff. It's good to stay in shape. It's good to stay mentally tough. It's good to always be developing professionally and meeting new people, because people are the gatekeepers to all success in any career in life. And like I said, just always be growing, like be studying with people. I haven't been studying, like, you know, Ray Luzier is in Nashville, and we have like this kind of like all drummers, we have this mutual admiration society. He's like, well, dude, I don't play country. And I'm like, dude, you could totally, it's classic rock. You could totally do this. And I'm like, I would love to have some more of that. You know, I know a lot of Ray's like little melodies and stuff, and I've totally stolen them. But at some point I might want to go over them and be like, look, for once in my life, I want to finally get my double bass speed, like just crushing. And he would probably be like, all right, dude, adjust your heel here. This is the kind of shoes I wear. I want you 12 hours a day with the metronome. Like he would have the answers for me, right? So be open to those kind of things, you know?
Yeah. So it's kind of being like an ever student, always grow, always look to
always
learn.
grow. At the very least, be listening to not only the history of popular music and where we have gotten our influences and how it all went down, but also trying to keep up with the crazy kids. And, you know, Jason would be great for the podcast. He's a dear friend of mine. You know, Marilyn Manson, Smash Mouth, Chris Cornell. He's talking about this new language that exists with this up and coming generation of drummers, because Jason and I, we studied big band and we studied classical, but really like our favorite language is more the blah, boom, blah, boom, blah, bing, you know, just kind of like driving rock. Like we love that thing, like 70s inspired. And he's like, if you listen to these crazy kids today, it's all 30-second notes broken up all over the kit. Like everything is lightning fast. And it's just like, that's not us. Like somehow along this 50 years, this new language emerged, and we could try to kind of play at it, but it's like, I don't hear that when I get out of the bed in the morning. I don't hear, I don't hear all that. I'm playing a song, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not hearing that stuff in my head. It's a brand new language. So it would behoove me to kind of like maybe shed that stuff a little. And then part of me is like, I don't know, do you like it? I don't know if I like that language. Maybe I'll just keep speaking this old language. I don't know. But I think it's good to like be always growing, stay positive, change with the times, but still own your thing and make sure that thing is spit polished up at all times.
Yeah. And that's so interesting, as it leads me perfectly onto my next point. In a world of like unlimited resources for drummers now, you know, like the last guy I spoke to, Tom Marsh, he's with Lana Del Rey, and we had this conversation about you know, when drummers were way back in the day, you know, Vinnie Colaiuta was famous for saying like, you know, he just did stick control for like 2 years and then he moved on to another book. but there were only like 5 books out, you know? So it was like, and there was no internet, so you couldn't learn, everything was listened to on the radio and things like that. But now we have unlimited possibilities. And I just finished reading Benny Grebb's Efficient Practice for Musicians book.
Nice.
And his advice is willful ignorance so just practice what, like you just said, practice what you like and what you're focused on, because you'll get taken away by too many things that are cropping up. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, kind of with that Greg Bissonette, you know, like be good enough to cover a lot of different styles, but ultimately you're going to have a thing that you gravitate towards. Like, so if people put me in that same category as my heroes, like the Liberty DeVitos and the Kenny Aronoffs and the Max Weinbergs, that are like, he's a big beat arena drummer, like, I'll take it. But then at the same time, if somebody calls me for the reggae gig, or if I got a sub for somebody on Family Guy, or you know, doing some classic rock tribute band, or I've got to play some classical stuff or cover for you on the cruise ship, like, I literally can do those things, right? So have your bases covered so you can go in a lot of different directions, so you have the skill set to attract more opportunities to yourself. But at the same time, you're going to have this thing where this lane that you're in, where it's like, this thing just comes totally natural. As far as resources out there, everybody has an online drum school now. Like, you can get drumchannel.com, and there's the Thomas Lang drum school, the Greg Bissonette drum school. Drumeo is a great resource. Mike Johnston, like, all these different things that you can put together. And then if there's a great guy in your area that knows jazz brushes, kill it. Like I said, I want to take double bass lessons with Ray Luzier. You put that all together. And then as far as books, Syncopation for the Modern Drummer, Ted Reed; Stick Control by George Lawrence Stone; Realistic Rock by Carmen Appice; The New Breed by Gary Chester; Jim Riley's Modern Styles book; Jim Riley's Nashville Number System book; maybe my book, Fundamentals of Drumming for Kids, because it works for a 5-year-old. It also works for a 50-year-old man that acts like a 5-year-old. That's a good start for a lot of things, because that way you're going to cover your reading. You're going to know how to read a number chart. You're going to be able to use all 4 limbs. Like, one of the things in my book, Fundamentals of Drumming, is I've seen professional drummers that play on records that literally they can't go boom, ga, boom, boom, ga, and go against that with the hi-hat. Boom, ga, boom, boom, ga, boom. They get all crossed. Their wires get crossed. And I feel like you should be able to play 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, quarter notes on the hi-hat, upbeats on the hi-hat, eighth notes on the hi-hat, splash on 1 and 3, splash on 2 and 4. Against any beat in the world. And so, like, that's what these books like The New Breed and my Fundamentals book will do. So those are kind of like a good kind of library to put together as far as books, but also realize that books aren't the answer to everything. You're going to have to get out there and play with real musicians, because that's like where a lot of your growth happens, because the bass player is going to be yelling at you, dude, every time you go to the bell of the cymbal, you drag. Or the band leader's like, every time you do a fill, you come out ahead of the beat. And so you need to get this feedback from people so you can see how you really play music. You know?
Yeah. Great advice. Always, of course.
Yeah.
And so I watched one of my favorite, I don't know if you know who Zane Lowe is.
Not yet.
I don't want to get this wrong. He's a New Zealand host for BBC Radio, and now he's moved to Apple Beats, and he does like very famous like interviews with like Ed Sheeran, Adele, like the biggest names on the planet. He did a series with Kanye West. And one of the things that Kanye West touched upon was he found it incredibly difficult to stop being pigeonholed from being a rapper to being taken seriously in fashion. And so I would love to know if you found any difficulties in diversifying your career.
Totally. Because people don't want you to be successful in one thing. And then if you are successful in one thing, you try to change, evolve, expand, or grow. They're like, yeah, good luck with that, kid. Hollywood's a tough town. Or, oh yeah, another motivational speaker. Like, you're going to act, or like, what are you doing as an, like negative Nellies, haters, they're all out there, you know, and you just have to go boldly into the night and just keep pressing forward. I know that there's going to be some sort of an outlet for the Rich Redmond Show. The way has not been revealed, But if I just stay in my lane and I keep doing it and I keep the quality super high and I keep building and getting better and better guests and keep getting better and better at my interview skills, something is going to happen. And so you really, if you have haters, you're doing something right, right? And if you're going to grow, evolve, and change, which is what we want to do, because you make great wine from taking the grapes and making something beautiful out of it. If they're on the vine, they're just rotting. Right. And we don't want that. So we got to take that and we got to turn it into something. So that the idea is just to be passionately persistent, no matter what, you know?
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, man.
So where would
hey,
you
guess
love
what?
to...
I got it. Oh, I was going to say, I got to go interview Jimmy Vivino. He was the band leader for Conan O'Brien's late night band for 20 years. And so in 16 minutes, I'll be interviewing him.
Okay, so my last, how many have we got time for?
You could probably hit me with 2 quick questions.
Okay, cool. Where would you love to see the Rich Redmond Show go?
Well, I'm open to whatever. Like, I mean, I've had offers already for it to go on to video on demand services, VOD, like, you know, your Apple Fire Sticks and all that kind of stuff, Amazon Fire Sticks and all. And I'm like, well, you know, then it's just bragging, right? You're like, you still have to tell people, like, look for me on channel 497. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing in that lane and growing it until more really high quality advertisers start knocking on my door, and or somebody comes and does the Joe Rogan thing. Is like, we'd like to purchase this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly, what advice do you have? We've touched upon so many pieces throughout this, but if you could consolidate advice for anyone wanting to be a pro drummer, motivational speaker, author, actor, what is it?
Okay. So how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, right? So the sooner you can find your passion, the sooner you can really roll up your sleeves and get after it. You know, those 10,000 hours, you know, the Malcolm Gladwell theory. So the sooner you know what it is that makes you happy, and in the process hopefully makes other people happy, the sooner you can start working. And if you're super passionate about something, it never feels like hard work, which allows you to work even harder. And the harder you work, more opportunities, events, places, people, circumstances will cross your path to cultivate success. So I would just say, find out what makes you happy. And even if it's a thing where you're like, well, you know, that doesn't, how am I going to make money doing that? Luckily, my parents weren't like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. I was like, I'm going to be a drummer. And they're like, okay, well, you love that. I can see that makes you happy. And you have a good kind of natural ability towards it. And so they, thank God, they supported me. But say you're a young kid and your parents aren't supporting you in that decision, you owe it to yourself to do what you want to do with your life anyways. And when they see the progress that you're making, your parents will eventually come around. When you're at the end of the thrust and you throw your parents your drumsticks, I've done that. And I said to myself, this could be the last time this ever happens. And you go to the end of the thrust and your parents are in the audience, and you got a tear in your eye, you're covered in sweat, and you throw the drumsticks to your parents, and they get to see their child's dreams come to fruition. That is heavy, man. But anything you want to do, you can do it. I'm telling you, you have to have that belief in yourself first and foremost. Until you believe in yourself, no one else will. And if you can, yeah, it's really smart to invest in Bitcoin. It's really smart to invest in buying homes, but you have to invest in yourself first and foremost, right? So I would say, work really hard as soon as possible with a smile on your face, and be unapologetic about what you want to do in life, and you will get there.
That is amazing. What a way to end. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And to all your listeners out there, man, I keep supporting this show, man. You're doing a great thing. And check out my show.
Yes, everyone check out the Rich Redmond podcast. He has incredible people on his podcast, and he is a great podcaster himself. And so one day I hope we will meet. I'm sure we will. I'm sure the universe will do that for us.
We will make it happen, my friend. This stuff will all go away, and we'll meet in foggy London town for some, we'll go to some 600-year-old pub and have fish and chips.
Sounds good to me, man.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon, man.
Hey, brother, let me know when this comes out.
I will do. I'll tag you on my platforms.
Okay. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
man.
You got it.